So welcome all to Shaman Sister Sessions. This is our 10th episode. We've been doing this for just over 2 months now. And I'm Michelle Hawk. We are together. We are the Shaman Sisters. This is Katherine Bird. And it is our great joy and honor to make this available to you. We speak about our work, our personal experiences, personal and professional experiences working with shamanic energies and working with the evolution of human consciousness. So thank you for joining us today.
It's an exciting day, Michelle. It is, it's the 19th, correct?
The 17th.
17th. I don't know. I'm always off on time. It's the 17th, and we are quickly approaching our inauguration day for our new president. And everything that has been going along with that. There's been a lot of talk in the spiritual communities and in different communities around this shift in direction. It's definitely, none of us can deny that there is definitely a shift in direction, and a lot of people are having a lot of fear and pain, a lot of doubt, a lot of negative shadow experience inside of this shift. And we wanted to speak around working in the shadow, working with the shadow, and not being taken out by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this question was actually put to us when we were putting out some feelers of what would you like to hear about, and someone suggested the how to work with the darkness, or how to work with these dark energies without having them take you down, without being consumed by it. And so we did our little conference, and we talked about, okay, what do we do? Because both, Kat, both you and I do a lot of work with the darkness. And viewers, I know some of you personally, I'm looking at who you are. I'm like, yes, I know you work with the darkness too. So throughout our talk today, please do feel free to chat in questions, comments, etc. Let's start with, I think one of the first things is reframing our relationship with the darkness. And we'll be speaking about this a little bit generally, but also in terms of what the context of what is happening now in our society. And, this is our special inauguration episode after all. And we know that a lot of people are working with dark energies, and there is this necessary purge that's going on the societal level. So how can we, as the warriors of the light, hold a really clear container for ourselves, for our clients, for our communities, in order to do this work well and effectively, and be advocates for the kind of change that we want to actualize? So starting with reframing the darkness.
Exactly.
What does darkness mean? What is that?
Exactly. I think that we, wow, we're taught to fear the darkness so much. I think that we talked about this once, about how our media, as we're raised, we're watching movies and we're seeing things that really give any sort of experience of darkness, of shadow, of just the dark, right? The dark is very scary. The dark, you don't want to go into the dark by yourself. There's wildness is scary. Animals are scary. Really, so much we should be afraid of walking out into the darkness, because we will be consumed by it. I think we're really raised on that fear.
Yeah, and especially with the dichotomy of dark and light. And this comes up in some articles too, where it's, if it's not light, it's dark, so dark and light, good and bad, and everything that comes with that too. And I think this is, we'll talk at some point about spiritual bypassing, right? I think this is one of those cases in which we are tempted to do that, or in which people are tempted to do that and say, oh, I'm not even going to acknowledge these things that are in the darkness and solely focus on the light. That does great disservice to understanding the powerful medicine that darkness has to offer. Darkness is neutral. Light is neutral. There is no good or bad in either. It is neutral energies that have their own flavor. And it's just, what scale are they on the vibratory frequency spectrum? That's really what we're working with. There is nothing to fear in the darkness, just as there is nothing to fear in the light. Fear is known as a dark energy because it is a teacher. It's a low vibration teacher. And it is a wonderful teacher. Anger, again, a dark emotion, a dark energy, or hatred or rage, all of these feelings. And, especially as we're putting this in the context of what's going on in our society now, a lot of these dark emotions and dark energies are bubbling to the surface. And they are teachers. If we view them with, shaming the people who are having these feelings, or if we view them with, oh, that's bad, that inherently puts us in a less able position to be actually present to help people or present to hear someone. But if we're viewing it as, okay, this is neutral. I have my feelings, you have your feelings, darkness and light, and everything in between, and it's all neutral, it's all energy. That's the first step to working with the darkness, is reframing your relationship. We did speak in a previous episode, it might have been episode 3, about cultivating a healthy relationship with the darkness. So viewers, if you're interested, I would encourage you to go back in the archives. It's on our YouTube channel and on the page on my website as well. We have all our videos. So we'll leave that there for now, and you can go back and see what we had to say previously.
Exactly. And, I think it is always especially as we are kind of turning on our spiritual awarenesses and realizing that there is light and there is love and we are all one, and all of these amazing spiritual knowledges, that we do have a tendency to compartmentalize things and to want that if we're not in the bliss all the time, that somehow that we're doing it wrong, that we're not being spiritual. And then we're confronted with something like this, where we're like, oh my God, this goes against everything that maybe I've ever, I believe in, and it's painful to me. And at that point, then we are trying to sort of do this spiritual bypass. We're trying to still be in the light, and we're not able to actually have the experience of just being present with what's there.
Yeah, we shut down that part of our ability to access the dark energies in the first place. We shut down, actually by saying oh, that's a dark vibration, I'm not going to acknowledge that, I'm not going to work with that. You're actually limiting your ability to do healing work or to be present at all, regardless of whether or not you're a practitioner. Being open to acknowledgement and expansive awareness, something isn't going to harm you just because you acknowledge it's there, so and spiritual bypassing. Let's talk about what that means for a second. We've thrown that term around a couple of times. So what is spiritual bypassing? And I also like to call it language of light shaming. We've referenced that a couple of times here too, where, or law of attraction shaming, excuse me, where, the law of attraction, it's such a beautiful concept. And when used in a healthy, expansive, aware way, it can, it can do a lot of good. I use the law of attraction. I talk about the law of attraction with my clients, and yet, your video is working now, or at least I can see you now. And yet, if there's a shame component involved, or if there's you're going to focus so hard on this light thing that you're not even looking at everything else, you're actually doing a disservice to your process, your personal process, or your client's process. And that is a one example of spiritual bypassing.
Right. And it has that flavor of avoiding, right? I mean, we all want to avoid pain. We want to avoid pain, but we know that pain is an amazing teacher for us. It gives us depth. It gives us clarity. It gives us a lot of information about who we are and who we want to be, and moves us forward on our path really quickly, usually. And we have the law of attraction, but there are other spiritual laws that a lot of times we're not in in awareness of at the same time, right? We have we have expansion and contraction. Everything is in a state of either expansion or contraction at any moment. And you know, for us to have expansion, we also have to have contraction. We have to have coming back towards something that feels constricted and tight, and then we expand from that place. And when we kind of look at things on that level and go, oh, well, this is just a part of a cycle of, you know, like you talk a lot about cycles of power.
Yeah.
That we're moving through these cycles constantly. And as spiritual warriors, we can witness within our own selves, you know, going into our dark night of the soul, usually happens multiple times, and we expand and we are full of light and joy and love, and we're mission out in the world, and then we have something that occurs and we go back inside of our cocoon and we get in our womb, and maybe it's pain, maybe we're realizing something really deep about ourselves, maybe we're doing it on purpose just to find out what's there and get a deeper sense of our mission. But there's always that expansion and contraction. And so I believe that we are in witness of it. And if we negate that it's not okay for there to be this cycle of expansion and contraction, then we're missing something. Because in that moment, when we go into the contraction, we actually go, oh, I actually have to work harder on this. I have to put more attention to this aspect of my life so that I can start to expand again.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, with the law of expansion and contraction, you know, as long as we're talking about universal laws here, you know, by negating a part of that cycle, or yes, you're right. I do love cycles of power. I talk about that all the time. You're only cultivating one type of intelligence or one type of awareness or one skill set. And inherently, it's not going to be as good or as powerful or as aware or as deep as if you cultivated it alongside the contractive, the dark, the yin intelligence and skill set as well. So I like to also give people a little analogy of, if the base of your pyramid is this big, it can be this tall, right? But if the base of your pyramid is this big, your pyramid can be this tall, et cetera, et cetera. So this can be applicable to any skill. In this case, we're talking about, you know, energy work or being an empath or being a force of social evolution and change in the world, whatever it is, or you as a sensitive person, the more you cultivate your foundation, which includes awareness, which includes developing multiple skills, not just being an expert in light work. Many light workers are experts in light work, and yet they have little to no experience in working with shadow. These people are possibly going to be receiving a rude awakening if they haven't already. I did. I absolutely did. I was in a phase in my spiritual evolution, my education, where early on I began, you know, discovering, oh, I can do this thing. This is real. Magic is real. Studying Reiki. It's all light, light, light. And then thrown into multiple underworld initiations and dark nights of the soul. And as a result of that, my practice, my personal and professional practice, has grown exponentially in my understanding and my ability to hold space, not only for my own darkness, but for the darkness of other people and darkness of society as a whole. So think about it as cultivating your skill set. What is your foundational skill set that you can dig into and invest in yourself by saying, okay, how can I bring awareness to my darkness and to the darkness?
Yes, because when whatever it is, like we can't lead anyone through something that we haven't done ourselves. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times healers, you know, we will hear their story and it is crazy. It's intense. It's dark. They've been through the ringer. And there's an important reason for that. And it, you know, we can at one point be like, woe is me, and why has all of this happened to me, and why have I had all of these crazy experiences, and it's so painful to be me. And we can be in that, or we can see it as the amazing teacher that it is, that, wow, I've been through all of this, so now I know what it's like to hold space for that within myself, and so I can hold space for others within that. And I think that we, as the healers, as the energy workers, we are being called up right now. We've been doing a lot of work on ourselves, a lot of individual work on our awakening, on realizing our gifts and magic, on going through our own dark nights of the soul and witnessing our own shadow aspects and pain, and from our families, our lineages. And I think that we've been in training for this time as we step more into leadership roles in our communities and with our clients and our families, to be able to support change and witness of shadow aspects of racism and misogyny and fighting and all of the things that we're seeing, bullying that we're seeing out there in the public eye so shockingly in some regards.
Yeah. We're already delving into this a little bit, but let's kind of go to our next point here. We talked about reframing the darkness. Now, what does it mean to be a warrior of the light? We're discussing, okay, so warriors of the light, they have a relationship with the darkness. Warriors of the light we're not bliss ninnies. I learned that term from you. I know, yeah, you throw that term around.
I had a partner when I was going through my awakening, and I was like blissing out, and he was like, "Watch out! Don't become a bliss ninny. You don't want to be that
right.
guy." And he was right. You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, bliss ninnies. No, warriors of the light are grounded in both the light and the shadow. Even warriors of the light must work in the shadow realms, and they do so with ease and grace. They do so understanding both sides because they are balanced. They have cultivated the understanding. They've been through their own dark night of the soul, and they work in service to the highest and greatest good in both the shadow and the light realms. That's a peaceful warrior thing. There's a couple of terms I like to use with that.
Yeah, and I have a new mentorship program, Light Warrior Mentorship, which is like a group mentorship program that I was called to create this year because of this, because I feel how much we're being called up. And, we change our relationship to the shadow of how we're seeing it. And then we change the relationship to ourself as to who we are. And we start to recognize and see, wow, I really have been through a lot, and I really am a warrior, and I am brave because I've stepped through fear. And then in the process, we start cultivating the aspects of ourselves that are that warrior, that are able to be in the dark, that move through aspects of fear when we feel it. And we start to change our relationship to ourselves as to who we are. We are not seeing ourselves, and I see this a lot as people have their sort of awakening experience, where we go through the process of seeing ourselves as, I'm so empathic, I'm so sensitive, I'm so, the world is so hard on me.
Right. It's hard being human. I can't go out in public because I'm too bright. I'm not supposed to be on Earth, or whatever the deal is.
I don't belong on this planet. No. All of the things that we just say those things over and over to ourselves, and we are just reinforcing that system of fragility, which is ridiculous, right? Because the light is not fragile. The light can burn through anything. So then if we start shifting our own awareness of self around, I am a warrior, what do I need to cultivate my warrior skills? And I believe sustaining practice and grounding in and, just strong tapping, strong breathing. You're out there running, and that's it's like, you got to be a warrior to go running in the snow. Doing ice baths, doing, whatever kind of thing it is. Maybe it's going outside at night where it's really dark,
Mm-hmm.
and just sitting and being alone, and butting up against the pieces that are uncomfortable, being in silence. Like sometimes that is really uncomfortable for people.
Creating opportunities for yourself to know all parts of yourself, not just the parts that are fun to talk about or fun to display to the world. Everybody's familiar with the social media phenomenon of, oh, people only post good pictures of themselves, of them having fun. Right. And so it looks like everybody has an amazing, fun-filled, happy, shiny life. Even these systems, our way that we communicate with our friends or communicate with the world are designed to reinforce that programming of it's only okay if everything's bright and shiny, and any shame brought, there is shame brought to the darkness. Now, I know, Kat, you and I both run in circles that are a little more comfortable sharing vulnerable things on social media. But often it does come with a preface of like, hey, this is a really vulnerable share, or like, a caveat of, I know that people don't really do this, but I really need support or whatever. And that is, we're doing it slowly as a society of making it okay to acknowledge the darkness. This is one of the things that warriors of the light must do in order to be fully in service to the highest and greatest good, is to not only reframe your relationship with the darkness externally, but reframe your relationship with your internal darkness. Create opportunities for yourself to become uncomfortable, or witness yourself, or maybe you don't even have to work that hard to create them. You just say yes when they come along, where you're having an uncomfortable conversation with your partner, for example, and you're feeling really overwhelmed. And you notice, oh, my shadow pattern is to shut down and run away. So instead of following my shadow pattern, I'm going to not do that. I'm going to sit and I'm going to be fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to acknowledge that this is really uncomfortable for me. And I'm going to witness myself in my discomfort. I'm going to ask questions of, what am I feeling right now? What is the worst thing that could happen to me right now? Is that actually going to happen? Probably not. And so how can I create space to move through that darkness, move through these little moments of darkness with an extra degree of peace and presence? An extra degree of devotion to yourself, your self-growth, and come out the other side. And then maybe the next time that happens, you don't get thrown into your shadow pattern. Maybe you can navigate it with a little more ease and grace. This is how we step into being a balanced, peaceful warrior of the light, is by understanding our own internal darkness and creating a space of comfort and peace within it. So we can sit with our shadow. We can sit with the shadows of others.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, in my relationship, this past year, I have definitely been doing some deep shadow work and really realizing some stuff about myself that I didn't really have a grasp on, and I wouldn't have found out in any other way. And I'm not 100% winning on the entire experience. Like, I witness myself in the experience and fail and keep showing up to try to do, take care of myself in a different kind of way and show up in a different kind of way and ask those questions and be in that discomfort in a way that that allows me to evolve. And it's definitely not, it's not the most delicious aspect of, relationship. But
or of anything for that matter. We all love to work. We all love to work with the fun clients who are like, yes, I want to step in with my purpose and be my expansive self. That's great.
Yeah.
That's the minority of my clients.
Right. And then, when we come in contact with someone who's a client or a friend or a family member who's really in their shit, and maybe they're in their shit for a while, and, our initial response a lot of the time is to be like, I don't really have time or energy for this. I'm an empath and I'm feeling all your feelings, so this is really hard for me.
That's the bliss ninny approach.
And I think that we are in this experience, like now we can look at this on a societal level where we are, you know, our brothers and sisters of this nation are coming and being like, I'm really in my darkness. I'm really in my shadow. I'm really exhibiting these behaviors that are from my lineage. I mean, in America, we're kind of assholes. We've done a lot of horrible stuff. Like our lineages are really tainted. There's never been a generation that wasn't at war. There, you know, that hasn't had, you know, the Depression, that hasn't had major wars, that hasn't had genocides of the native people on this land, that hasn't had slavery. Like we as Americans, we have a lot of shadow work to do, because even though we've moved through those things, they're not maybe happening exactly as they were now. There's still pieces, there's nuggets inside of there, just like there are inside of us, where we end up in relationship and then we exhibit our shadow behavior. There's little nuggets in there that we really need to work on. And for us that are of the light to be able to hold the space for this shadow play, and to not degenerate into name calling and being, you know, separation, but actually, you know, finding ways of asking them, just like you said, ask yourself, asking those questions, sitting in the uncomfortability, being present to what's there, and being human enough and compassionate enough to recognize we all have these shadow aspects. We all have these negative aspects of being jealous, of being bullies, of hating others because they're different.
Right.
Or that we all hold it in some kind of way.
And instead creating opportunities for connection and empathy. Now, Kat, you mentioned the shutting down, kind of going to the name calling route, or the like dissolving into the darkness route. We can also, you know, we did talk about spiritual bypassing. I'll bring it up again. We can also like shut down going the other way, of like, oh, I'm not even going to engage with you because you're not speaking my language and I only speak words of the light and love, right? That is just as dismissive. And so how do we walk that line of holding the integrity of compassion, holding the intention of clear dialogue and discourse and communication, and genuinely seeing and hearing people without having it, you know, slide too far in either direction? Now, I know you and I both do a lot of shadow work with our clients, our friends, etc. I want to talk about, you know, what are some of the tools that we use? You know, I'm imagining like working with a client of mine who's in a very expansive place, who wants help working on the light aspects of, you know, maybe like really expanding their practice or delving into their healing work. Feels very different from working with a client who's in a very contractive space. And the way that I prepare myself is different. And Kat, I know for you too, like I actually change my own energy in order to meet the person where they're at. And the same principle applies. For, you know, first we talked about reframing the relationship to the darkness externally, reframing our relationship to our darkness internally. Now, what do we actually change about ourselves in order to be on a similar level? You know, because if you're up here, you're running your high vibration frequency, you're not going to be able to meet anybody who's down here. So how do you bring yourself to a level where you can be present and witness and hold your ground without getting sucked down? Yeah. And I know, you know, we've talked about personal practice pretty extensively. I will do my my embodiment practice much more in depth before working with a really you know, a client who's very much in their shadow. So I will return to my base, my root. I'll get in my body. I'll do the tapping. I'll go for a run. I'll dance. I'll sweat. And I will actually lower my vibration to be more present in my physicality, thus building up my protection, really reinforcing my root chakra, reinforcing my safety. That's one of my tools, is really calling in the embodiment work.
Yeah, I love that. And that's such an important, that is such an important tool for us to remember. a lot of times us that where we focus on the light, we focus on consciousness, and we're like so becoming disembodied. It's very hard to relate to people who are still struggling in more of a base experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's super important. Something I wanted to touch on is, we said when we had our meeting yesterday, we said the word shape-shifting.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the things I wanted to touch on. And I was, this morning I was in bed and I was sort of seeing these images of, the demons, the deities that they're demonic. And we see them in all of the different cultures. They're fierce. They're with teeth and horns and buggling eyes, and snake, the nagas and the snakes and the dragons, and all of these fierce aspects. And in many shamans will call upon these darker sort of, they look like demons. They are demons. Mm-hmm. And cultivate relationships with these, with these energies, or the Kali calling her in, mm-hmm. Calling in the forces that seem frightening, because they're able to communicate with darkness. They're able to communicate with shadow. Mm. They're able to communicate with the aspects that are of that certain kind of fierceness and frequency. And so it's lovely to just be concentrated on, well, I work with the angelic realms, and I work with, the ascended masters, and all, of course, please do. But, sometimes when we're working in the mud, we need some allegiances with maybe some energies that kind of hold that frequency more, because they're like, yeah, let's get in there and like,
yeah. They know how to move energy differently. And so that's a really great point, is the allies whom you call upon when working with really high vibration, third eye chakra, angelic realms, and ascended masters, going to be very different from, okay, we're doing super like down and dirty soul retrieval through the muck of ancestral trauma. You're going to call upon different guides. You're going to have different allies who know how to move energy differently. Yeah. And yeah, definitely some of the, like, again, none of these are bad. Like, darkness isn't bad. It's just important to remember, and this is kind of a safety thing. Remember that any guide, no matter whom they are, even Archangel Michael, or any animal guide or any demonic guide, has their own agenda. I think that's really important, and it's easier to get away with, okay, when we're working with the angelic realms, like their own agenda is very light and sparkly and lovely, and usually not in conflict with ours. And yet they still have their own agenda. Same thing goes with working with demonic guides. It's okay to do, as long as you have that safety conversation, like have your consent conversation with your dark guides before you work with them of, okay, what are you about? What's your energy about? What's your agenda? And is this actually a good fit to work in partnership to move this energy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's totally doable, but must have, like, you must be really conscious and cautious in your boundaries and your safety.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, in the experience of sort of like kind of putting those two concepts together, of taking the embodiment and taking sort of that darker energy reality, so of and then shape-shifting, of actually doing stuff like doing practices that are more and sticking the tongue out and being fierce and squatting down and moving the body like a warrior, moving the body like an animal, letting an animal energy come through you that maybe is a little bit more in the realm of something that would be like, yeah, I'm cool with this work.
Mm-hmm.
And using it as like an embodiment. I mean, if you're going to be going out and there's a lot of people going to be going out to the protests this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to, if you're going to be out there with lots and lots of people, maybe that's not even something that you ever do, and maybe that's going to be overwhelming, of really calling in maybe an animal that's going to be really strong for you, and before you go, grounding down and letting that energy kind of move through your systems, through like, okay, I'm there, I'm in this, as this filled up with the power of something that's giving you a different frequency, almost.
Yeah. I
Shifting.
think dragon is a really good one for that. I mean, I know you mentioned dragon, and it's popping to mind as like, yeah, absolutely. Dragon would love to work in this realm. And so, suggesting to our viewers, if you feel so called, that is an ally who is offering themselves forward of shape-shifting in dragon energy. So again, we've also talked in previous episodes about some protection work that you can do. That would be really important too. I know I definitely do. I set my boundaries and protection before I do any work with anybody, light or shadow or whatever. But particularly with your shadow work, it's essential, absolutely essential. And I mean, we're talking about, how do you work with the darkness? Again, going back to our question, how do you work with the darkness without being consumed by it?
Right, because there are people who do cultivate relationships with darker frequency energy, who receive power. You can receive a lot of power. There's a lot of power in that, and it can take you out.
Yeah.
So,
and some of these people, some of these traditions, I mean, there are whole school, like mystery schools built around working with dark energies.
absolutely.
This is a thing, and then you can lose yourself in it. And you can become ultimately a servant to whatever other agendas are at play, rather than your own agenda of service to the highest and greatest good, as a warrior of the light who happens to be working in shadow realms.
So being really clear, even just saying those words as you just said it,
Yeah.
Being very clear that I am a sovereign being, and I am here as service to the light, that I am a warrior of the light. And being very clear about what your mission is, about who you are, stating it out loud and repeating that, and asking for guidance and protection from your guides that serve your highest and best.
Yeah.
And, only working with those that do serve the highest and best. And, being really clear, clarity, I think, is really important when we're in that space.
Yeah. We've also talked a little bit about a couple of times about what is the agenda of a guide that you might be working with, and what is your own personal agenda. I mean, that's super clear. That is super important. Clarity, your intention is your most powerful tool. So especially when you're, again, like, I feel like you can get away with more when you're working with the light angelic realms. There's a little bit more room for, okay, maybe your intention isn't like 100% clear. When you're working with the shadow, you must be 100% clear, 111% clear. You must be like totally on it. And in order to, especially if you are actually altering your own energies, as we've discussed, either through shape shifting or calling in different allies, or welcoming in, hey, Kali, yeah, or Pele even, those are really big forces who, again, have their own agendas. And so if you're not in alignment, or if you think you're doing this one thing with them and you're calling them in and they have this totally other thing in mind, it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to feel good. It's, like, I've never been in quite that position before, because I've always been very clear about, okay, who am I calling in and what am I doing? But I have been in positions where I'm running an energy through my body that either I didn't protect myself properly or didn't. And actually, this happened when I was working on my aunt who has cancer. And I didn't do proper protection on myself. And I was working in shadow realm with her, as she's in healing crisis. And I ended up kneeling on the floor. I was doing a distance session with her. I ended up like on all fours on the floor, feeling like I was going to puke out my guts. and I wasn't actually throwing up, but that was an example of I didn't do my proper, preparation for working with the shadow. Cancer is really sticky. I didn't do my proper, my boundaries and protection. I didn't do embodiment practice beforehand. I was kind of squeezing her in, before another client, which, that client ended up being late, thank goodness, so I had time to prepare myself. But it does take its toll if you do not take your proper precautions.
Yeah, and I think closing is also, we need to state, like, if you are going to call in an energy and work with it, that it's really important to also close that container.
Yeah.
And, let them go, release any contracts, release any cords that you're holding in connection with that energy, that our work together is done for now. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you. And, because you don't want a certain energy to just be like, okay, well, now let's just keep going. And what's going on in your life? What can we destroy for you?
Right. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Thanks, Kali. That's enough. Great. So let's talk a little bit about, what is the process of alchemy? We're calling this episode, this very special inauguration episode, the Alchemy of Darkness.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, and there are 12 alchemical steps. There's 7 main, alchemical steps. And the first one really is on calcination and burning. And you can't go through an alchemical process without burning something up. It has to just be really evaluated. It has to be really looked at. It has to have devotion and discipline and kind of be broken down and
deconstruction.
It has to have destruction.
Yeah.
There has to be destruction in alchemy. You don't build something from, nothing. You're transforming one energy or thing into something else through tearing it apart and putting it back together. And when you put it back together, it's reached another level of evolution, and then we go through dissolution. We let go, we start to bring in the feminine, we bring in water. We're like, okay, now we're sort of flowing with what is left over after we've been really looking at it really clearly. And, that piece about emotions, we're moving emotions through the system at this point. And we have to be aware of what's happening in our country and the systems and the social structure. We have to see it. We have to burn it up and tear it apart. And we have to actually process the emotions. I think there's a lot of unprocessed emotion in our country based on the traumas that we've had here.
Yeah, we as a country like to do the spiritual bypass thing.
We're great. America's so great. We're so great.
Right, exactly. It's not fun to acknowledge, we have a history of hatred and slavery and disease and war and depression, all of these things. And so again, going back to the acknowledging every step of the alchemical process, it's important to keep in mind that you're working with a brand new energy. As you take something apart, you're pulling it into its base structure. You're pulling it into its molecular structure and pulling them into tiny, tiny, tiny bits and putting them back together in a different way. Yeah. Every step of the alchemical process is a brand new energy. So it's important to keep in mind your approach and your energy is going to have to change with it. Trying to treat, and this is something that I know you work with too, and I've encountered when I'm working with a client where we'll start the session one way, and by the end of the session, they're a totally different person. And through that, we've had to take these steps of, okay, what is the new energy that's coming up now? And who do I have to become in order to work with that energy? What do I have to change about my state of being in order to address that? Same thing here in social evolution. Who do we have to be in every moment to address this stage that we're at as a society in the alchemical process?
Right. So the next step is separation, which is wherein we get to see the essence. We get to see what's underneath as we started to kind of clean everything away. We get to see the purity of who we are as we separate things apart, and we kind of are able to I just want to say essence. Like, we keep seeing that essence of the truth of who we are, right? And if we can tear apart the hate and the anger and the rage, and we can process the emotions, then we can go, oh, well, at the essence of who we are, we're about freedom, and we're about justice. We're about justice and freedom. That's what we're really about. But all this other stuff is sort of like mucked up the system.
Yeah, and kept us from living and actualizing the truth of that essence. So, again, holding kind of the overall intentions of what is, and this is going back actually a little bit to what we talked about in our last episode of living our purpose on the individual level as well as the collective level, is how do we hold the purpose for ourselves individually, but our purpose for the collective? What is it that we're actually doing? Why are we even bothering to muck around in the darkness in the first place? Why are we even talking about this? It's because we're holding a vision collectively for the health and well-being of all beings. We're holding the vision of social evolution and change. We're holding the essence of compassion and freedom and justice, all those American ideals. We're holding the vision of independence and sovereignty and health and happiness, right? That's our essence.
Yeah, and so the next piece is conjunction, which is bringing things together and uniting the things that have been separate. And when we're bringing them back together, we're bringing them back together in a more whole way. We're sort of taking the pieces and we've refined them. We've taken the gunk out, and we've refined them to the place that now when we start to bring things back together, it's more unity, it's more unified, it's a more whole system, it's of a higher level of frequency. And it's sort of like, there we are, like, okay, now we're at this phase of the development. And then we go into the fermentation, and we're like, oh yeah, okay, let's really sit in this. Now we're here, we're whole, let's, like, what can we create now? Like, here's where we get into, our real spirituality, and we get into, like, the potential of what we can create together. Now we've come together and we've gotten more whole. And then we move into distillation, and sort of then we can get into the greater good and service and being together, community and co-creation.
Yeah.
And
Kat, it's really important. I want to emphasize to our viewers as we're going through this, you can't skip any steps.
No, you can't skip any steps. And we really want, like, what we've been trying to do is sort of get to this place where we're like, unity, what we see, right? We're like, well, why can't we just be at, like, unity consciousness right now?
Right. And yet the process of alchemy is really, what are you doing in alchemy? You're taking a base level material and turning it into a very high vibration material. You're transforming lead into gold, right? And lead doesn't jump right away to gold. You've got to dissolve all the molecules apart. You have to, every step is super essential. You cannot skip any at all. And the same happens when we're looking at this process of alchemy in terms of what's going on for us as a country, what's going on for us as a planet. We can't skip any steps.
No.
We've got to look at what needs to be destroyed, what needs to be dissolved, what needs to be examined, what needs to be washed clear in the waters of emotion. And then like, only after we've taken everything apart and done the dissolving, then can we ever have any hope of starting to go back into the bringing them back together, the connection.
Right, and then we get at the end, the last step, at least for the 7, is coagulation, and coagulation. So we're really coming together in this, like, rejuvenation and this new experience. And we all want to be at that place. We're in this new experience. And we have to acknowledge that we didn't get to where we are as the spiritual beings that we are, the healers that we are, or wherever we are on our journey. And maybe you're in one of these phases right now that's really uncomfortable of your alchemical process, but we don't get through to where we are, when we look back and we go, where did we start from? A lot of us started from places where we were really shut down, or we were conservative, or we were hyper religious, or we were really in fear, we were really in trauma. And so we have to acknowledge that as a society, we who have gone through this alchemical process within ourselves, and we are mastering it, learning how to do it over and over, because you just keep doing it over and over and over again, and you slowly go higher and higher and higher up on the wheel. We have to acknowledge that now we can go, okay, I see you. I see you where you're at. I see that you're in the fire. And I know how uncomfortable it is to be in the fire. And I know that everything that you have known up until this point is starting to burn, and it hurts. It's uncomfortable. And you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know that there's unity consciousness. You have no idea what's on the other side of this process. You don't know that there's gold. All you know is lead. And so you're like holding on to your lead as much as you possibly can. And it's really hard for us to go, well, can't you just see that you're gold? When we can go, okay, look, let me help you through the fire. Let me help you through this process by being compassionate, by having conversations, by, working maybe with people who we wouldn't necessarily work with, and tuning into people who maybe we would shun or not have a good relationship with, and acknowledging that where we are as a whole, as a country, that we're in this process, we're in a really uncomfortable portion of the process. And for us to hold our eyes on, okay, yeah, we are transforming, we're transmuting, we're in the cauldron of transformation, and we're moving toward the gold. But this is a process. It's a process that we must go through, because we can't spiritually bypass the fact that we've had all of this trauma in our collective as a nation. We can't spiritually bypass slavery and genocide and racism and sexism. All of these things are coming to the surface right now in a huge way, and we are seeing them. They're like, it's like we've collected we've been collecting all of the stuff and all of the lead, and we're like, okay, we're gonna throw it in the fire, and
we're in the burning stage right now.
We are.
As a society, this is one of those situations where it is possible to be in multiple places on this in this process at once. So where are you personally in the alchemy process? We invite you to have a look at your own alchemical awakening, if you will. And where are you? Are you in the burning phase? Are you in the dissolution phase? Are you, somewhere farther along? Are you in the coagulation phase? Where are you where's your family? Where's your community? And looking at where we are as a society. As a society, we are right at the beginning. We are right at everything's got to burn, because there's no way that we could move beyond where we are now without really dissolving, really burning away all of these limiting ideas, all of these beliefs that some people don't have rights, that some humans are less than others, or that people don't deserve to be healthy and happy. Whatever these ideas that we have, they have to burn. Whatever systems are in place that are creating oppression, that are creating injustice, or promoting inequality, or wealth inequality, or gender inequality, or whatever, they have to burn. And they have to be dissolved and taken apart molecule by molecule in order to have any hope of reconfiguring them in a way that actually serves humanity, in a way that actually serves society for the highest and greatest good. So this is our call to you as warriors of the light. Please witness your own alchemy and witness how you can be who you are as a warrior of the light. Do what you need to do in order to step with us into this field so that we can do this work together. Yeah. We're building our army of peaceful warriors.
We are, for sure.
Yeah. One other question that, Kat, I know we talked about yesterday, but it's, and we haven't, we're basically out of time. So, right. So a question to ask you is, how can you be a new kind of leader? Or like, what kind of leader do you want to be? Do you even view yourself as a leader? Did you ever view yourself as a leader? And what are you noticing in yourself in that? And this is like a, super brief touching upon just now of like, okay, what is your relationship to leadership? And maybe we can do another episode on this later.
On this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, wow. So that was really great. We had lots of really interesting tools around changing our relationship to darkness, to shadow, seeing it differently, having a different experience of it, changing our own relationship to ourselves as who we are, what we're capable of, and the power that we have, the energy that we're running, our own systems of protection and boundaries, and all of our own relationship to ourselves, and then our relationship to the process that we're in, so that we're not bemoaning where we're at. We're actually seeing it as a space that's going to propel us forward, and then allowing ourselves to find out where is the place that we're going to fit into this process. Where are we going? How are we going to be the alchemist in this? And are we the alchemist, or are we the fire, or are we the water, or are we the air that's going to kind of move through and pull the essential oil off the top of the work? And what are we? What aspect are we? And where are we going to fit in? And how are we going to move forward in a way that's really empowered?
Yeah, definitely. So we gave you a lot to work with today. Please do keep this in mind as we move into this weekend. I know there are protest situations going on all over the place. There's, please be safe. People's emotions are running pretty high. There's, I do feel as though there is a potential for, even though a lot of what I'm seeing is emphasis on the nonviolent protests, things can get dangerous when people don't have their healthy relationship with the shadow. So again, embodying this, okay, what does it mean to run these energies in a healthy way? Do your protection practices, stay grounded in your body if you're choosing to involve yourself in a protest or any of these group situations. Make sure you're present, not getting swept away. Again, how do we work with the darkness without being overcome by it or without losing ourselves? You stay in your body. Do your embodiment practices, do your protection practices, your grounding practices, and even when you're shape-shifting, stay here so that you can be safe, that you can be a warrior of the light, and be really clear with your intentions. What is your purpose in going to that protest or that rally? How can you embody your warriorhood to inspire others to do the same in an empowered way? Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And so we invite you, this is our 10th episode, so we invite you back into our previous episodes. Maybe you'll see some of the things that we kind of touched on a little bit here more completely. And please, we would love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions about things that you would love to hear us talk about, or any comments or anything that's coming up for you, we'd love to hear from you at shamansistersessions@gmail.com or on our Facebook page of the same name. And we are really honored to offer this work into the world and to be in this experience with you. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes, thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure. And to put on your radar for next week, we will be holding ceremony. So, with all of these energies moving around, we thought, okay, yeah, we definitely want to be holding some ceremony for ourselves and for the collective consciousness. So it'll be ceremony, ritual, more specifics yet to be determined, but you will be invited to join us in holding intention and moving some serious energy. So, and fun energy. It's not powerful. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, and many blessings for going out as alchemist warriors of the light.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.